Hello, welcome to Using Cornell Notes in your AP Government classroom. My name is Brian Stevens. I'm an AP Government teacher like yourself, living in Coldwater, Michigan, teaching at Coldwater High School. What we're hoping to do is to impress upon you how you can use Cornell Notes in an effective way in your classroom and give your students that little edge that we're all looking for as AP Government students. And then they can be excellent test takers come May 1st, and we'll be able to use this method to help them with their study of the class. You have before you right now a blank template of Cornell Notes, and just a real brief overview because some of you may not be familiar with them. But this is what they look like. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the organizational piece. The right-hand side, you'll see the note-taking piece. And at the bottom is a summary. We're going to talk about all of those a little bit more in just a few minutes. So first of all, just let me give you 4 points that I think that are important as benefits for using Cornell Notes in your AP Government classroom. Number 1, it's an organized method for note-taking in your class. Now, if you're anything like I was when I grew up, no one told me or taught me how to take notes properly. We just wrote down the most important things. Cornell Notes provides this organized structure for the students. It provides organization, the ability to take notes, and the ability to review their notes with a summary. So it's a great organizational structure for note-taking. The second thing is I like to use Cornell Notes for their reading, for their chapters. So every time we take a test, a multiple choice test, whatever we're taking a test over, let's say the Constitution, then they will turn in a set of Cornell Notes for that unit or for that chapter that we're studying at that time. So it makes the students accountable to the book, which I still like to do. I might be a little old school as far as using the book goes, but I think that it's still effective. And using Cornell Notes is a way to make sure they're accountable to the reading. Third thing, I think that Cornell Notes are a great catch-all, okay, for our class. I think every teacher worries about that little concept or idea or something like that that they didn't cover in class, and they really worry about it. Well, if you make your students accountable to a chapter or unit, then that makes them accountable for the reading of whatever we're looking at that time, whether it's the presidency or the Constitution or whatever the case may be. So it's a great catch-all. And I'm not afraid from time to time to throw a question or two on the multiple choice portion of the test, okay? That may not have been something we covered in class, but was definitely in the reading, and we'll make the students accountable for it. That's the third point. The fourth point, Cornell Notes are extremely flexible. Every teacher can use them as he or she sees fit. So I like to tell my students that Cornell Notes are kind of like Monopoly, right? Everybody plays Monopoly a little bit different in their home. So in the Stevens house, we play one way. You go to someone else's house, they play another way. Well, Cornell Notes also have the ability to modify for your class and your needs. So sometimes people might want to organize the left-hand side differently. Some people might say, okay, we're only going to use the bolded terms for the notes. Some teachers, particularly when you have younger students, you may not even want to use the summary at all. So Cornell Notes, I think, is a great way to have the flexibility that all of us can use as teachers to help our students with their reading and their note-taking. So let's talk about the structure, at least how I use Cornell Notes. And before you know, there's a template that looks at the structure of it. So the left-hand side, as I said before, is the organizational piece. It's set aside for readings, that is, for headings, subtitles, or sometimes essential questions. I myself like to use the left-hand side for a chapter unit of headings in a chapter, and that's how they're going to organize their note-taking. Some people would like to use subtitles, okay? And other teachers like to have essential questions on the left-hand side and ask their students to take notes on the right-hand side in regards to those essential questions. Sometimes they lay them out for them, give them the essential questions, and that becomes the focus of their organizational piece for their Cornell Notes, all of which are perfectly fine. That's the modification that we can all make. On the right-hand side, where the bulk of the work is going to be done, is the note-taking. Okay, this is where the students are going to write down the most important ideas and concepts from the reading that they've just done. Obviously, the best way, or one of the easiest ways to do this, is every textbook nowadays has bolded or highlighted terms, key terms for a chapter or unit that obviously are going to be in their notes. However, we want our students to go a little bit more deep than that, to look at key concepts and make sure they put those in their notes as well. That's going to vary from student to student. Some are going to write volumes of notes. Other students aren't going to write so much. It really depends on what the needs of the students are and the expectations of the teacher. The bottom is the summary, which is the most difficult part of taking Cornell notes. And what the summary is, I like to do a summary, okay, which is a culmination of the ideas and concepts of that page of notes. Every page is going to have a summary, okay? Some people like to use summaries for the end of a section. Some people like to use summaries for the end of a chapter. It's totally up to you. But I like to do summaries for the end of page of notes that they just took. It provides a review of those ideas and concepts that they just went through for those particular pages of notes. So I like to do that. Now, that's one of the things I also make the students very accountable to, is that when they do this, they have to do the summary. And I do grade their Cornell notes. I do it on test day, like I said before. And sometimes students like to skip the summary, and that's something that we're going to hold them accountable to, and they're going to lose some points. So we really want our students to attempt doing the summary, even though it might be a little bit different, okay? So just to give you an idea of what Cornell's notes look like with a student, the next template we're going to show you is a set of Cornell notes that one of my students graciously did. And this comes from the AMSCO book. It's Chapter 1, Section 1, Ideals of Democracy. And you can see what he did here. So on the left-hand side, he has two subtitles, Influence of Enlightenment Thought and Enlightenment Philosophy. So he's got those two different titles on the left-hand side. That is organizing him. The right-hand side is his notes, and you can see how he broke this up. So he kind of has a declarative statement at the beginning of each section, and then also he has made sure that he's made his notes on this page. Now, one of the things I ask my students to do is to make sure that they differentiate their notes, and you can see that this young man did that. So he used dashes, he used dots, he made those into separate notes, which makes it easier for him to review and frankly easier for me to grade. So on that right-hand side isn't just a hodgepodge of different notes, it's all glommed together and you can't tell one point from another. Here he has clearly separated those. So on the second area where he has an Enlightenment philosophy, the focus that he has was on Enlightenment philosophers of the 16th and 17th century, 18th century as well. So he does his declarative statement, which I don't ask students to do. He just went ahead and did it. More power to him. And then he's separated by having those three philosophers, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, taking notes on each. And also notice that he also did the little dots and dashes to separate his ideas on those three philosophers. At the bottom is the summary. So he's looking at the most important points that he had from his notes. He's also looking at the left-hand side, the organizational piece. So one of the things that I ask my students to do is they have to write at least one sentence in their summary for every topic they have on the left-hand side. So the student here had two topics. So he's going to have a minimum of 2 sentences in a summary. Probably should have 3. All right. If they have 3 topics, then they have 3 sentences. So on and so forth. Okay. So that kind of gives them a guideline for their summary. All right. And he did a nice job here. He's looking at the different items that he actually wrote in his notes. He's making a compilation of them, and he's listing what he considers the most important themes of the notes that he just had written. Once again, I like to emphasize, and that's just me, that what we're asking the students to do is to summarize for each page of notes, back and front, each page, not the end of the section, not the end of the chapter. Once again, that's a modification that just works for me. So I just want to kind of go back and talk about how important Cornell notes are. And like I said, it's a great way for your students to be accountable to the reading, okay? So one of the things in theory you could do is I use this AMSCO book. It's excellent, okay? And it covers the CED from units 1 through 5 extremely thoroughly and in the order that appears in the CED. So in theory, you could give your students a textbook like this AMSCO book, And they could take Cornell notes over the entire book and really cover the content that they would be familiar with and need to know for the AP test in May. Now, you and I don't know that that's not the best teaching method in the world, but in theory, that's what you could do with this book and using Cornell notes, okay? Because it aligns with the CED perfectly. So, I also anticipate that there's going to be some units and chapters that I might not be able to cover, but I'll ask the students to be able to do Cornell notes with them and try to figure out a way to hold them accountable via testing. So I just gave you some examples of how Cornell notes could be used in your classroom, actually outside your classroom. I hope that you found some benefit out of this presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My email is found below, and I'll help you in any way that I possibly can. So good luck in your school year. Have your students do great on the AP test, and I hope they all get 5s. Thank you.